With the release of the newest chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen, and Yuta Okkotsu still being nowhere to be seen, everyone is wondering why exactly Yuta isn't on the battlefield, since he is known as one of the heavy hitters for Jujutsu High. But rather than him being sent out, they send out Higuruma and Yuji. In this video, I'll try to explain why Yuta hasn't been sent out yet, and what exactly his role will be in the final part of the manga. But before we begin, I'd like to say that if you enjoy this type of Jujutsu Kaisen content, make sure to like the video and subscribe to my channel, since it'll tell me to make more in the future. To answer the question of what Yuta's final role will be, we first have to answer the question of how strong he is. And Yuta is no joke when it comes to power. He was designated as special grade even when he didn't know how to use Jujutsu due to the fact that he had Rika on his side. And then when he lost Rika, 2 months later, he simply gained the name of special grade once again. And not only that, but he was also called second only to Gojo in unusual abilities. And while I don't exactly believe that he's the second strongest behind Gojo Satoru, I do believe he is one of the strongest people in Jujutsu High. And as this power part of the video goes on, you'll find that it gets more and more confusing as to why Yuta isn't being sent out, even though he has amazing power. And these powers are only amplified by Rika and his mimicry curse technique. When Rika helps Yuta, not only does she replenish all of his cursed energy, but she also acts as a storage space for all of his cursed techniques and cursed energy. And this connection with Rika can be sustained for 5 minutes, making him a lot stronger than his normal state. So with the knowledge that Yuta has a bunch of cursed techniques just lying around with Rika, it really gives us a question as to why Yuta isn't being sent out to help, even though he is undoubtedly one of the most versatile fighters in Jujutsu High. Well, in my opinion, this question really comes down to 2 key factors. Number 1, what can Yuji and Higuruma do that Yuta can't? And number 2, what is Yuta's role as the insurance for the Jujutsu High team? And I'll answer these questions in the order that I presented them since it makes the most sense. So for the question of what can Yuji and Higuruma do that Yuta can't, let's start out with Higuruma. As we know, Higuruma isn't the best hand-to-hand fighter, but he's somebody like Akari, whose curse technique is inherently linked to their domain. And to be honest, Higuruma's domain is kind of overpowered. When inside of Higuruma's domain, no violence is allowed, and you're put on trial for some crime you committed. Higuruma and his opponent have to argue about whether or not the crime was committed, and Higuruma is given the burden of proving that he did the crime. The verdict is determined by the Shikigami-looking thing called the Judge Man, who knows everything about both players in the domain. And of course, depending on the severity of your crimes, the worse the punishment will be. And this might not be a major problem if it wasn't Higuruma who had proved that you did the crimes, since he is widely known as a genius of the justice system. So unless Sukuna gets revealed to be some kind of special grade debater, he's probably not coming out of this domain with all of his powers that he walked in with. But this is all assuming that somehow Higuruma gets his domain off. But if he does, Sukuna also probably wouldn't be able to use a counter domain technique or his own domain, since that might be considered violence. And as we see from Yuji, when he was proven to killing the entire city of Shibuya, he was given something called the Executioner Sword. This sword makes it so that whoever's cut with it, without exceptions, will die. And as we know, Sukuna's done much worse things than just killing a city. So now Higuruma's ability and why he was sent out might make sense to you, but the question of why Yuji was sent out is still a very valid question. And to move on to that, we first have to go to chapter 222 and the implications of the chapter for Yuji. In this chapter, we see Yuji training with Kusakabe, where it seems like Yuji is in Kusakabe's body and vice versa, with Kusakabe telling Yuji he needs to master it already, and Yuji saying his catchphrase of Osu. And if this is true, this is most likely some sort of soul swapping ability, since as we see before, Yuji was given a book by Choso that held all of Yuki Tsukumo's research on soul data. But this isn't the only potential power up for Yuji, I guess you could say, since the same chapter seems to also implicate that he ate the cursed wombs, or Choso's brothers, with Yuji first saying he'll eat anything to kill that guy, referencing Sukuna, and then Maki saying that they need to render Sukuna unable to fight. But the most compelling evidence for this would be when Yuji was given the book by Choso, he tells Choso thanks, to which Choso replies no problem, but Yuji responds no, I mean about your brothers, and Choso simply says that's okay, they'll live on inside of you. And this whole sequence would clearly imply that Yuji ate the cursed wombs that they found. And as we know from the fan book, Geyu Agatami said that if he were to eat the cursed wombs, he would gain the cursed energy that they hold. But I wouldn't doubt that he'd leave out the cursed technique part, since he wouldn't want to spoil the viewers. So now Yuji may have 6 different cursed techniques and a boost in cursed energy. But the thing that people are mainly worried about from Yuji is why he has claws in the most recent chapter of the manga. And to be honest, this one kinda stumped me. The only thing I can think of is that since Yuji's been imbued with Sukuna's cursed energy, he started to gain some of his physical attributes, since we see that when Sukuna's in Yuji's body, he does gain claws. But this is also fairly inconsistent, since there are times where Sukuna incarnates into Yuji but doesn't gain any claws. But now that we've gotten those questions out of the way, we can finally get into why Yuta wasn't sent out. And the answer most likely is that Yuta is the insurance for the Jujutsu High team, with that meaning that they're waiting to get Sukuna to a certain point where he would be able to finish him off or do something significant. We see Magi says that Yuta is in a chapter where Yuta is about to go out and fight Sukuna with Gojo, so they obviously do have some type of plan for Yuta and as to why he's not going out. And if you think about it, it does kind of make sense to send out all these players before Yuta if you consider him as the insurance. Considering the fact that Kashimo and Hikari should be stronger than him based on his own admission, those two are the easiest picks. And now that we've gone over what Yuji and Higuruma can do, those two are also pretty good picks. But Yuta seems to be some kind of trump card for them that they'll use at a certain point that'll completely end the fight. But there also is the possibility that he isn't a trump card for Sukuna, but is rather a trump card for Kenjaku. As we know, at least ever since Sendai Colony, Yuta has wanted to fight Kenjaku in order to not let Gojo go through the process of killing his best friend once again. So with this in mind, and also keeping in mind that Kenjaku is currently in a hideout somewhere, the question of if Yuta could beat Kenjaku is kind of iffy. We obviously know that he's able to beat special grades like Yuki Tsukumo, and now that he has Tengen in his arsenal, who is known as the strongest user of barrier techniques, we have no idea just how powerful he's gotten. But I do believe that Yuta may be able to beat Kenjaku, just due to the fact that he has more connection to Kenjaku than he does with Sukuna. So him beating Sukuna rather than Yuji makes a lot less sense in the story. And I'm not even saying that Yuji has to beat him fair and square, but Yuji probably will be the last one to get a win on Sukuna. And it would make sense for Yuta to be the one to finish off Kenjaku. Since it'll come full circle with Volume 0, where he killed Geto, and it would come full circle with him also disproving Kenjaku's thoughts about his power level. And Yuta would probably be a surprisingly good match against Kenjaku due to the fact that he can output positive energy to destroy curses, making all of his abilities very effective against any curse that Kenjaku would throw at him. And Yuta also might have gotten stronger from watching the Gojo vs Sukuna fight and learning a thing or two from that, such as possibly being able to create an open shell domain just like Sukuna, or maybe even copying Sukuna's curse technique, since we know that even though he would be able to copy Limitless maybe, he wouldn't be able to use it due to not having the 6-eyed disposition. There's also the idea that Yuta might have copied Angel's curse technique, and after Sukuna gets seen as guilty by Higuruma's domain and gets his powers taken away, he may be exorcised by Yuta. But like I said, I don't really believe this, and I do believe that Yuta will probably be the one to beat Kenjaku rather than beating Sukuna. And as it stands right now, Yuta doesn't seem to be too much of a threat to Kenjaku, at least off of my own speculation, with Yuta having trouble with people like Ryu and Uro, even if he isn't trying to kill them. And Kenjaku has just been implied to be on a different level than them as a whole. But the one thing that I think gives Yuta the advantage is the fact that Kenjaku may be underprepared for a fight with Yuta. The reason for this being is that he actually seems to kind of underrate Yuta's power, with him saying that he doesn't really get what everyone sees in him, and even though he has the ability to copy curse techniques and a boundless curse energy supply, he doesn't think that Yuta can become the next Gojo Satoru. But the main thing here is that he doesn't know that Yuta doesn't have Rika's soul anymore. He says that both of these abilities are a result of him having his detained level in soul, but this isn't true anymore, since after Volume 0, Yuta has let go of Rika Orimoto's soul, and now only has Rika, the Queen of Curses. So with the advantage of positive energy, Kenjaku's lack of knowledge on his abilities, as well as Maki possibly fighting with him, the Jujutsu High team may be able to win against Kenjaku. That's all I have for today. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like the video and subscribe to my channel, so it's time to make more Jujutsu Kaisen content in the future, and also comment down below what you think will happen to Yuta near the end of the series. Goodbye.